The queen mother said that having twin princesses was a sign of great misfortune. So when my sister and I came of age, one of us became a princess and the other a servant, with tears streaming down her face. The younger sister clung to her mother's legs and pleaded with her. The Empress Dowager felt sorry for her because she was the youngest daughter, so she ordered me to yield. From then on, my younger sister became the highly esteemed Princess Suwaning, while I became Changning, a servant in the cold palace. My younger sister has a crush on the young chancellor and goes out of her way to win his favor, but he has no interest in the powerful and wealthy. Instead, he spends more time with servants like me. When the Xiongnu invaded, my younger sister, still in the prime of her youth, was forced into a political marriage and wed to a Khan decades her senior, where she endured endless humiliation in a foreign land. As for me, I married into the chancellor's household and became the chancellor's wife, the envy of everyone. While I was pregnant and waiting to give birth, my younger sister, who had sneaked back home, killed both me and my unborn child with a single stab. When we opened our eyes again, we found ourselves back on the day we were brought back to the palace. This time, my younger sister is eager to go to the cold palace to serve as a maid. I couldn't help but laugh. Why would anyone give up being a princess to become a servant? Main text. Don't blame your mother. Twin princesses are a great omen of misfortune. It was no easy feat for your mother to raise you both in secret until you reached adulthood. Now, one of you must make the ultimate sacrifice. The Empress Dowager wiped away her tears in front of my sister and me, and asked us to make a final decision. When my sister and I were born, our mother told everyone that she had given birth to only one princess, who, due to poor health, had been raised at a temple in the countryside. But now, doubts are beginning to surface within the palace, and the princess living in the temple must return to the palace. Of you two sisters, one can be a princess and enjoy a life of luxury and privilege, while the other is confined to the cold palace as a lowly concubine. No sooner had the empress spoken than her younger sister stepped forward and said, "Mother, let my elder sister be the princess. I am willing to be a servant or a maid, quietly watching over my elder sister and you." When I heard that, I realized I wasn't the only one who had been reborn. My dear sister has also been reborn. The empress was taken aback. Her younger sister had always been delicate and precious. How could she possibly agree to become a palace maid? She asked uncertainly, "Sui Ning, are you really willing?" My younger sister nodded eagerly and said to me, "Sui Ning is willing to let you be the princess of Great Xia. You're a bit slow on the uptake, and I'm afraid you'd get bullied if you were just a palace maid." The queen mother was deeply moved and held her close. "My dear Suwaning is such a sensible and well-behaved child. Changning, why don't you thank your sister right away? Once you become a princess, you must take good care of her behind the scenes in the palace." "Thanks, sis." I couldn't help but laugh. I could see the eager excitement on my younger sister's face all too clearly. She should really be thanking me for letting her take my place as a servant. Before we parted ways, my younger sister couldn't hide her smugness and whispered to me, "Sister, you just go ahead and be the princess of Daxia this time. And as for me..." She smiled but said nothing. I nodded cheerfully. "Don't worry, little sister. I'll definitely do a great job as a princess." My younger sister has lived a life of luxury since childhood. There's no way she'd willingly settle for being a lowly servant. The real reason she didn't become a princess was that she was actually afraid. In our past life, when mother asked us to choose our identities, my younger sister threw herself at mother's feet, clung to her leg with tears streaming down her face, and sobbed that she didn't want to be a servant. She said to me, "Changning, ever since we were little, I've always let you have the best things. This time, you should let your little sister have a turn." The queen mother was moved by her tears and decided to make her younger sister a princess. The Empress Dowager said, "Changning, as the older sister, you ought to give way to her." I knew I had no choice, so I agreed. From then on, Princess Suwaning, the sole princess of the Great Xia dynasty, returned to the palace as the object of the emperor's favor, while the neglected cold palace within the imperial compound gained a young palace maid with no name or surname. On the day the princess returned to the palace, the people lined the streets to welcome her. Flowers carpeted the ground, and the court officials all knelt before her in unison. It was a truly magnificent sight. My younger sister thought that from then on, good times would begin. But she never imagined that the court was so eager for a princess because the great Xia army had suffered several consecutive defeats beyond the frontier and lost several cities. There is an urgent need to arrange a marriage alliance involving a princess to resolve the conflict with the Xiongnu. And my younger sister, who has just returned to the palace, is the only legitimate eldest princess of Great Xia. Before long, the emperor issued an edict ordering that my sister be sent beyond the Great Wall to marry the Khan of the Xiongnu. The Khan is now over 50 years old, has a harem of wives and concubines, and his youngest child is about the same age as his younger sister. My younger sister refused to marry. She already had someone in her heart, none other than Su Ruin, the youngest young chancellor of Great Xia. She fell in love with Su Ruin at first sight, but Su Ruin was a proud man who disliked associating with the powerful and wealthy. He refused to accept the gifts his younger sister had given him on numerous occasions and even went out of his way to avoid her. My younger sister was deeply upset. The fact that her marriage plans hadn't gone as she'd hoped left her feeling downcast, and although I should have been suffering in the palace, I actually lived a carefree and happy life because I was so inconspicuous. I ran into Su Ruin while I was secretly picking flowers outside the cold palace. I handed him the most beautiful cherry blossom branch and told him not to let it slip. Su Ruin asked my name, and I shook my head and said I had no name. When we met again, Su Ruin gave me a painting. I opened it to find a depiction of a palace maid picking flowers. I pointed at the person in the picture and exclaimed happily, "She looks just like me." Su Ruin nodded. "That's you. Now, may I ask your name?" I wrote the character for peace in the palm of his hand. Since my younger sister is a princess, I can't use Ninga's name anymore, but when it comes to Su Ruin, I still want to tell him the truth. Rumor has it that the young chancellor, Su Ruin, has already set his heart on a certain woman, and that he once cried out the name Ninja in his sleep. My younger sister was overjoyed, believing that Su Ruin had been moved by her deep affection. She even planned to ask the emperor for permission, claiming that she and Su Ruin were mutually in love and that their union was a match made in heaven. She ordered someone to secretly steal the small portrait he had painted of Miss Ning from the chancellor's residence. When she opened it, she was initially delighted, but soon flew into a rage. Although the young lady in the portrait bore a slight resemblance to her, she was dressed in the attire of a palace maid. My younger sister was furious. She stormed into my shabby little place and smashed all my belongings, pointing her finger right in my face. She screamed, "You lowly palace maid, how dare you even think of marrying Chancellor Su?" But not only did I get married, I had a grand wedding. The day Su Ruin married me was also the day my younger sister moved far away to the frontier. She watched as I was escorted in a procession of 10 miles of red, celebrated by thousands, while she could only bid a tearful farewell to the Empress Dowager and board the carriage bound for the frontier. After my younger sister married the Khan, her life became very difficult. A young foreign princess, sent as part of a peace marriage alliance and possessing few skills, suffered endless humiliation on Xiongnu territory. Even the lowliest Xiongnu soldiers dared to sneak into her tent. Unable to bear the humiliation, my younger sister secretly fled back to the capital, only to discover that I was pregnant with Su Ruin's child. Su Ruin and I are deeply in love and happy together, and having a child will make our lives even more fulfilling and perfect. My sister, driven mad with rage, was lying in wait outside the chancellor's residence. When I stepped outside, she lunged forward and stabbed me in the stomach. Both my child and I died at her hands. However, we were reborn together, back to the day when we had to choose our identities. This time, my little sister isn't playing princess out to steal my life, but she doesn't know that becoming the sole princess of Daxia has been my lifelong dream. My mother dressed me in a magnificent court gown. She sighed and said, "Changning, now that you have become a princess, you must fulfill your duties as one. Not only must you be obedient, but you must also take good care of your younger sister from now on." I realized long ago that, both in this life and the last, Mother has always favored my younger sister. I asked. Mother, you really want my sister to be a princess, don't you? The Empress Dowager paused for a moment, then explained. When you were born, Suwaning was frail and tiny. I suppose you must have taken her nutrients while you were still in my womb. She has a gentle nature and a weak constitution. As her older sister, shouldn't you be the one to give way to her? Soft-hearted and frail. When my sister stabbed me and the baby in my womb with a knife, she didn't hold back at all. She had plenty of strength. I smiled and said to my mother, twins aren't really sisters. Just because she's weak doesn't mean I have to go easy on her. Survival of the fittest, the weak are weeded out. That's the way of the world. The Empress Dowager looked at me in utter astonishment. Changning, how could you even think that? I patted her on the shoulder. Mother, I won't just think that, I'll actually do it. If being a princess means nothing more than sacrificing myself in a political marriage when the country suffers defeat, I'd rather be a servant in the cold palace. Being a princess isn't easy. I started from scratch and had to learn all the court etiquette. The instructor kept tapping me on the back, and my neck was aching from practicing balancing a vase on my head. During the day, he studied etiquette and practiced his conversational skills. Every night, he stayed up late studying by lamplight. I read military treatises and ancient texts, revisiting the books I read in my past life and making sure to thoroughly study the ones I never had the chance to read before. To be a princess, one must possess not only the outward trappings of the title but also inner grace and poise. In her previous life, my younger sister couldn't handle the hardships. She dodged her studies by acting cute with our mother, but as a result, she later made a mistake during the court ceremony, drawing ridicule from the other concubines and leaving a poor impression on our father the emperor. On the day I returned to the palace, the ceremony was nowhere near as grand as the one my younger sister had in her previous life. In fact, it was almost completely quiet. The Empress Dowager said, Changning, you're too proud and headstrong. I'll have to temper your sharp edges a bit. I didn't really react to it. After all, my mother's favoritism isn't anything new. I am used to it by now. I, the eldest princess, returned to the palace in silence. Many people didn't even realize that the princess who had been raised in the temple had come back. Father only summoned me on my first day back at the palace. Seeing that mother wasn't particularly concerned about my affairs, he paid me even less attention. Meanwhile, my younger sister, who was a palace maid in the cold palace, was living the life she'd always wanted. The Empress Dowager secretly gave her a considerable amount of money. Even the lining of her palace maid's uniform was sewn by the Empress Dowager herself using silk, for fear that her younger sister's skin might become rough. There is no mistress in the cold palace at the moment, and the other palace maids are all good-natured, simple-minded women whom the Empress Dowager has carefully selected. My younger sister lived a carefree and unrestrained life in the cold palace, hoping only to meet Su Ruin again and create a romantic tale of a palace maid and the chancellor. Before long, the day arrived when I met Su Ruin in my past life. That day, my younger sister even wrote me a letter inviting me to see the cherry blossoms outside the cold palace. I stood a short distance away and watched as my younger sister climbed the cherry tree, broke off the largest branch, and handed it to Su Ruin. One was a young chancellor, elegant and otherworldly. The other was a young maidservant with a smile as radiant as a flower. At first glance, they really do make a good match. The girl in the tree spotted me too. She pretended to be about to fall, and Su Ruin, standing beneath the tree, quickly spread his arms as if to catch her. My sister didn't fall. Instead, she shot me a defiant look. She was telling me that everything that belonged to me in my past life would belong to her in this one. I clenched my fists and was about to step forward when my mother suddenly appeared and grabbed me. The Empress Dowager scolded me. Changning, how dare you show up here? If anyone sees how much you resemble Suwaning, you'll both be finished. I remained silent. The Empress Dowager spotted Suwaning and Su Ruin standing not far away. She changed her tone and said with a smile, Look, Suwaning and that minister Su really do make a fine match. The Empress Dowager seemed to have thought of something and instructed me. The spring banquet is just a few days away. When Chancellor Su comes to the palace, Changning, you must cover your face with a veil. Do not let him see your face. I couldn't help but ask, why? I am Su Ruin's wife, but because of the Sui Ning period, I cannot even reveal my true appearance. The Empress Dowager said, your sister likes him. And he seems to like her too. They're mutually in love. You've already secured your position as princess. For the sake of your sister's promising marriage, what's wrong with covering your face? Perhaps realizing her tone had been too harsh, the Empress Dowager patted me on the shoulder. Changning, I'm asking you to cover your face for your own good. If the matter of the twin princesses is exposed, both you and Suining will be in mortal danger. Besides, you can't very well leave Suining in the cold palace for the rest of her life, can you? Helping her marry into the Chancellor's household will be a good thing for you, too. Good news. I unclenched my fist and pretended to accept her advice. Mother, Changning understands. On the day of the spring banquet, I will be sure to properly cover my face for my younger sister's sake. I ran into Su Ruin at the spring banquet. In our past life, we were husband and wife, but when we met this time, we were strangers. I didn't listen to my mother, and she was very angry about it. At the spring banquet, officials from all over will be gathered. If I cover my face with a veil, it's bound to attract attention. If Father the Emperor questions me about it, I'll be the one in trouble. This idea which hurts me and benefits her must have been my sister's. As for the Empress Dowager, she has always listened to her younger sister. Not only did I not cover my face, but I actually dressed up all nicely, which made my mother so angry her face turned green. Actually, I'm not worried that Su Ruin will catch on to anything, because I know he can't even remember the faces of people he doesn't care about. Su Ruin grew up in poverty, leading a frugal and austere life, and even after becoming chancellor, he never lost his humble nature. While the situation on the frontiers was dire, the spring banquet at court was extraordinarily lavish. Su Ruin had no desire to attend this banquet in the first place. He looked down on us privileged elites who care only about our immediate pleasures. I really wanted to strike up a conversation with him, but he didn't even give me a second glance. With no other choice, I had to go find him myself after the banquet. Su, please wait. I called out to Su Ruin, who was hurrying ahead. He turned around, saw it was me, thought for a long time, and finally remembered who I was. Your Highness, Princess Changning, this is Su Ruin. I instinctively reached out to help him up, but Su Ruin took a step back, putting some distance between us. He was extremely wary of my sudden act of kindness. May I ask, Your Highness, why did you summon me? The shield knew. No sooner had I spoken than a young eunuch I didn't recognize approached and said to Su Ruin in a flustered tone, a moment ago, someone slipped a letter into my hands, saying it must be delivered to you, the Chancellor, and that it concerns a matter of the utmost urgency. I didn't dare delay, so I hurried to bring it to you. Su Ruin glanced at me, took the letter, and opened it. After just a quick glance, he bowed to me and took his leave. This is indeed a matter of the utmost urgency. I humbly asked the princess to allow me to take my leave. It was only then that the young eunuch standing beside him realized that I was Princess Changning, who had just returned to the palace. Before I could answer, Su Ruin had already turned and walked away, while the young eunuch remained kneeling on the ground, scared out of his wits. I have bumped into your highness and interrupted your conversation with the chancellor. I deserve to die 1,000 deaths. Never mind. I had no intention of giving a eunuch a hard time. So after thinking for a moment, I asked, who told you to deliver the message to the chancellor? I was just about to have a word with Su Ruin when the letter arrived. The timing was a bit too perfect. Before the young eunuch could answer, someone stepped out from the shadows of the trees behind him. It's me, the veiled girl smiled, a hint of uncontrollable pride playing at the corners of her mouth. Once everyone around her had stepped back, my sister removed the veil covering her face. It's clear that you really want to rekindle your relationship with the chancellor, but unfortunately, that chance is no longer yours. I said flatly. What did you write in the letter you sent him? My younger sister smiled faintly. It's really nothing much. I just told him that the cherry tree where we pledged our love outside the cold palace is dying. And asked him to come take a look. My younger sister let out a feigned cry of surprise. Oh my. I almost forgot. In our past life, you and he also sealed your love under the cherry blossoms. Sister, now that it's me and him enjoying the flowers instead, you won't be upset, will you? I snorted and didn't answer, but my younger sister grew even more smug. You, as a princess, asked him if you could speak with him a little longer. Yet that didn't hold a candle to a simple letter from me. Sister, you know Suruin so well. You should know he doesn't care for people of your high station. As for me, though I'm just a lowly palace maid, we get along very well, can even recognize my handwriting now. Sis, I know you still want to marry him, but as long as I'm around, that's just a pipe dream. After saying that, my younger sister stormed off, leaving no time to join Suruin in trying to save the withering cherry tree. I shook my head. Did she really think a few cherry blossom trees could win Suruin's heart? It wasn't the flowers and plants that made him fall in love with me. It wasn't long before dire news arrived from the border. The Chui family army, led by the general of the Imperial Guard, was defeated by the Xiongnu and lost 2 border cities. The court was in a state of shock and confusion, and panic spread throughout the palace and beyond. My father has always been a mediocre and incompetent man who can't come up with any good ideas. The court officials were divided into 2 factions. One favored war, and the other favored peace. Someone suggested, why not send a princess to form an alliance through marriage? I think Princess Changning, who has just returned to the palace, would be a good choice. She was raised outside the palace since childhood, so her bond with the emperor and empress isn't particularly deep. Yet she holds a noble status. Marrying off the eldest legitimate princess would demonstrate our sincerity and help stabilize the situation. The emperor was swayed, compared to a string of military defeats and the loss of one city after another. Marrying off his daughter, with whom he had little emotional attachment, seemed like the best option. I had long since heard the rumors circulating in the imperial court, and my sister, who was confined to the cold palace, even had someone send me a letter. My dear sister, just go ahead and marry the Khan. There are so many grown men in his household, you'll have to attend to each and every one of them. I know that after the Chui army suffers 3 defeats, His Majesty will order me to go and marry into the enemy camp. I have to turn my fortunes around before Chui's army suffers a total defeat. So the next day, I ventured into the imperial study all by myself. The eunuch said that the Grand Secretary and the Emperor were inside discussing important matters, and that no unauthorized persons were to disturb them. Without a second thought, I rushed right in. As expected, the Emperor was displeased. Frowning, he scolded me. "This is no place for you. Get out." But I was not the least bit afraid. "Father, I have come here to discuss matters concerning the border. Let me finish speaking first. Then, if you wish to send me away, it will not be too late." The Grand Secretary standing nearby stroked his beard and said with his eyes closed, "I wonder what the princess's thoughts are on this." I said frankly, "I believe there is still some room for maneuver in the war against the Xiongnu." The Grand Secretary raised his eyebrows and looked me straight in the eye. "How do we turn this around?" I recited the speech I had prepared in advance. The generals and soldiers of our great Xia are in no way inferior to the Xiongnu, but we were severely weakened by the previous battle. If we continue fighting, morale will falter, inevitably leading to even worse consequences. Our immediate priorities are, first, to bolster morale, and second, to buy time so that our forces can regroup. The Grand Secretary cleared his throat. "That's easier said than done. Your Highness, how do we keep the troops' morale up? And how do we buy time against the Xiongnu?" I bowed to the Emperor. "Your humble son, Changning, requests permission to go to the frontier first, to boost the morale of the troops, and second, to engage in feigned negotiations with the Khan of the Xiongnu, thereby buying more time for our soldiers." As soon as I finished speaking, the imperial study fell silent. I unfolded the border map I was carrying and pointed to the marks on it, saying, The cities the Chui family's army has lost this time are all strategically strongholds by all accounts. They should be impregnable. Yet the Xiongnu have captured 3 of them in a row. This proves there must be a mole within the army. The Chui family's army isn't weak. It's been betrayed by a traitor. The most urgent task right now isn't to send supplies, but to root out the mole. The Grand Secretary saw the various markings I had drawn on the map and asked me one by one what they meant. I answered fluently, not only explaining the terrain along the border in great detail but also combining my knowledge with military strategy to outline our planned route of march. He gave me a long, thoughtful look, then poured me a cup of tea himself and handed it to me. Princess Changning is both brave and resourceful. She is a blessing to our great Xia. He looked at the emperor. In my humble opinion, the princess is quite right. The emperor, who had never been one to make up his own mind, heard what he said and immediately made a decision. Then let's do as Changning says. The soldiers of our great Xia would never lose to those barbarian Xiongnu. I do not wish to marry the Khan of the Xiongnu, nor do I want the people of Great Xia to live under the shadow of the Xiongnu for decades to come. In my past life, although I was just a lowly palace maid, I paid close attention to developments in the imperial court and news from the border regions, and I knew them inside and out. Su Ruin and I would often discuss current events under the cherry blossom trees, and his eyes would light up whenever I shared my bold opinions and unconventional ideas. Su Ruin never loved the palace maid who plucked blossoms for him beneath the cherry trees. What he loved was a soul that was both wise and radiant. Unfortunately, my sister doesn't know that. On the day we set off for the border, I was surprised to find that Su Ruin was among our group. I thought he was just following orders and would treat me the same way he always had, with indifference. I didn't expect him to strike up a conversation with me right after we set off. His voice came from outside through the carriage. Ertain. The teacher said that the princess planned this all on her own. I wonder what made her so bold. The teacher he was referring to was none other than the Grand Secretary, a court official for 3 generations. I pulled back the curtain and saw Su Ruin's sparkling eyes, just like the way his eyes would sparkle when he was excited in his past life. I smiled and said, as a princess, revered by the people, I naturally ought to play my part. Does the Chancellor really think that people like us are destined to be good-for-nothings forever? Your humble servant dares not. Your humble servant. I pulled the curtain close to show that I didn't want to talk to him any further. It's his own fault for running off after reading the letter on the day of the palace banquet. I'll make sure he gets a taste of being turned away. I really underestimated how thick-skinned Su Ruin was, even though I acted completely cold toward him. Whenever he had a moment, he'd stick to me like glue, insisting on discussing border matters with me. We had a wonderful conversation, and the more we talked, the more we felt a deep connection. Su Ruin was so moved he slapped his thigh. If all the princes and nobles in the realm were as brave and resourceful as the princess, and held such a sense of justice, then a golden age would be just around the corner. His words made me blush, and I waved my hands repeatedly. Actually, strategy is only part of it. The most important thing is that I've lived through this once before, so I know who the mole in the Chui family's army is. So as soon as we reached the border, I took decisive action to root out the mole. The general of the Imperial Guard had initially been quite skeptical of my abilities as a delicate princess from the capital, but when I laid all the witness testimony and physical evidence before him, he was completely won over. Princess, you really are. You're simply amazing. I sent another invitation to the Khan of the Xiongnu in the name of Thaner Traitor, stating that I, a princess unwanted by both my father and mother, was willing to cooperate with the Khan to help him capture more cities in the Great Xia. The greedy Khan was tempted and asked to meet with me alone outside the city. On the day of the date, Su Ruin was even more nervous than I was. He insisted on coming with me. The plan had been going very smoothly. I had gained the Khan's trust, buying the Chui family's army more time to rest and regroup for the next battle. But just as I stepped out of the tent, someone I don't know who fired a surprise arrow at me. At the critical moment, someone stepped in front of me to block the arrow. It's Su Ruin. However, his identity was exposed, which also alerted the Khan. How could the Prime Minister of the Xia dynasty be here? Princess, You're pulling my leg. I quickly helped Su Ruin onto the horse, and we fled through a hail of arrows. The horseback riding skills I'd practiced since childhood actually came in handy at that moment. Su Ruin leaned against my back and said in a faint whisper, "I am incompetent. I have ruined your highness's brilliant plan." It certainly threw a wrench in my plans. But then again, he is Su Ruin. I put up with it. Since the plan failed, the outcome could only be decided on the battlefield. The Xiongnu advanced with great ferocity. But our forces did not back down. Throughout 4 months of fierce fighting, I remained on the front lines the entire time, never stepping back for a single day. I lived and ate with Cui Jejun, and discussed military strategy with the general and his troops. Whether to step back or move forward in the end, it was always up to me to decide, simply because they trusted and believed in me. As for me, drawing on my memories from my past life and the wisdom gained from 2 lifetimes, I made all the right decisions. The Xiongnu suffered defeat after defeat and retreated time and again. Finally, we won this hard-fought battle. On the day the Xiongnu retreated, the camp was abuzz with excitement. The soldiers were shouting my name, ready to toss me into the air in celebration. After spending time together, they no longer treated me like some kind of princess. At that critical moment, one person raised an objection. It was Su Ruin, who stepped out of the tent. He frowned and scolded the crowd. "How dare you? The princess is of noble birth. How could you possibly?" The general of the Imperial Guard laughed at him. "Chancellor Su, didn't you used to detest this sort of rigid hierarchy? Why are you saying such things now that we're talking about the princess?" Su Ruin blushed and didn't know how to respond. So in the end she could only look at me with a pleading expression. He pointed to the long-healed scar on his back and said plaintively, "Changning, the wound on my upper back is starting to ache again." The people around him burst into knowing laughter. This wasn't some aloof, otherworldly chancellor was clearly a total two-faced schemer. I returned to the capital with Cui Jejun's army, and the moment we entered the city, a shower of flowers and fruit rained down from above. The general of the National Defense once wanted to lavish praise on my achievements in the military newsletter, but I stopped him. The people cheered, calling out my name, believing me to be a blessed princess who had brought good fortune to the Cui family's army. Back at the palace, father was so delighted that he took my hand and wanted to talk to me at length. He said with a smile, "My son Changning is truly blessed." No sooner had he arrived at the front than he turned the tide of battle. "How fortunate! How fortunate! You have rendered a great service this time. Is there anything you desire? Tell me, and I shall grant your every wish." I replied, "This is simply my duty. I would not dare to ask for any reward." The emperor then asked Su Ruin, "And what of you, Chancellor Su? Having rendered such meritorious service, what reward do you desire?" Su Ruin pulled back his robe and knelt on the ground. "I do indeed have a request, but I am unsure whether I should make it." "Never mind. I haven't asked her opinion yet, so I'd better not ask for now." When he said that, everyone understood immediately. The emperor laughed heartily and said, "Chancellor Su has devoted himself entirely to the service of the state. Even if he were to marry a heavenly goddess, I would grant his request." Su Ruin's cheeks flushed slightly as he looked at me and said, "Your Majesty, I don't want some heavenly goddess. I only want her." "Changning, stop right there." Outside the palace, my younger sister called out to me angrily, "I underestimated you," she said. "I didn't realize you were so capable, but let me tell you, I'm determined to marry Su Ruin." I was slightly surprised. "Did he ask father for your hand in marriage? How can you be so certain?" My sister turned pale. She knew full well that the person Su Ruin wanted to marry was me. "Humph. Do you think I've just been sitting around waiting to die these past few months while you were away? Let me tell you, I've already had mother speak to the lady of the Su family and arrange for me to be granted the title of county princess, so I can marry into the Su family in style. Su Ruin is a dutiful son. He'll definitely do as his mother says. When it comes down to it, the Empress Dowager still favors her. Even a lowly concubine in the cold palace can be granted the title of county princess. My sister looked at me with a piercing gaze. As for you, you're now a princess of great renown, and he is the chancellor, second only to the emperor. Do you really think father would marry you off to Su Ruin? Even if he were willing, Su Ruin's exalted status would surely arouse suspicion among others. And he would let you go. I shook my head and told my sister, no, he won't let go. Just you wait. My sister was seething with anger, but she managed to force a smile. Even if he doesn't want to let go, I'll make him. To everyone's surprise, Su Ruin not only asked his father to arrange a marriage between him and me, but also voluntarily resigned from his post as chancellor. He said, I am willing to give up everything to become Princess Changning's husband. Such dedication and sacrifice truly left everyone speechless. His Majesty once gave his word that he would grant his permission even if he were to ask for the hand of a divine maiden. And with the Grand Secretary acting as our matchmaker, this marriage is a done deal. Father asked me, Changning, what about you? Do you want to? I replied, someone has been begging me for days. So I suppose I'll reluctantly agree. I didn't even need to look back to know that Su Ruin must be so happy right now that his tail is practically wagging a gale. Just as father was about to arrange a marriage between me and Su Ruin, my younger sister burst in. She shouted, they can't get married. Because I'm a princess too. If you're going to arrange a marriage, arrange one for both of us. If we're going to die, we'll die together. Just as I had imagined. She came after all, determined to take me down with her. Since she can't marry Su Ruin, I'm not getting married either. The Empress was startled to see her younger sister burst in. The Emperor frowned as he moved to seize his sister, but the Empress quickly stepped in front of her to protect her. Your Majesty, she isn't lying. She is also your child with this servant. All those years ago, I gave birth to twin princesses. As soon as these words were spoken, the entire hall erupted in an uproar. Everyone was well aware of the imperial astrologer's dire prophecy concerning the twin princesses. The Empress Dowager was forced to reveal the whole truth. While her younger sister watched the emperor weep, her tears streaming down her face. Father, my sister and I are twins. We are both your children. Why is it that she can be a princess of Great Xia, while I am merely an obscure, nameless servant girl? If being twins is considered an ill omen, then my sister and I should bear the consequences together. We rise and fall together. My sister's face was contorted with rage, and she glared at me like a venomous snake. I understand that she wants to bring me down from my high horse and drag me down into the mud with her. The Empress Dowager will pull her out of the mire. The only one who will truly sink is me. The Emperor remained silent, and no one could guess what he was thinking. The Empress Dowager paused for a moment before smoothing things over. Actually, the notion that the twin princesses are a sign of ill omen was merely a jest made by the imperial astrologer many years ago. Now that we see how Changning has brought good fortune to our soldiers beyond the frontier, she clearly isn't a harbinger of misfortune. In my opinion, we should restore Su Waning's title as princess as well. If the two of them were to marry Chancellor Su together, it would make for a lovely story. Upon hearing this, Su Ruin turned ashen and shook her head repeatedly. No, this absolutely won't do. Your Majesty, I know you persuaded my mother earlier, but marriage is no trivial matter. My heart belongs solely to Princess Changning. I implore you to reconsider. Faced with Su Ruin's resistance, her younger sister shouted excitedly, Su Ruin, do you dare say you've never had feelings for me? We clearly saved that cherry tree together outside the cold palace. Su Ruin shook her head emphatically. No. As for that cherry tree, I realized long ago that you had poisoned it. I couldn't bear to see a fine, 100-year-old tree die because of me. So that's why My sister was struck dumb and collapsed to the ground, and I finally took a good look at my little sister. Sui Ning, the world isn't as simple as you think. Good. Excellent. In that case, Father, why don't we just kill our sisters? My sister's gaze was filled with venomous rage. She was determined to take someone down with her, even if it meant her own death. Your Majesty, Su Ruin was even more anxious than I was. He knelt down and bowed his head. Princess Changning has done nothing wrong and has even rendered meritorious service. Why must she die? Sister Suwaning shouted. What merit does she have? She's just going through the motions and putting on a show at the front lines, and you call that a merit? Who knows? Maybe without her, we would have won this battle even faster. The Queen Mother clutched her younger sister's trembling body tightly. My child, say no more. Your Majesty. Both hands are made of flesh, please show mercy. Many of those present knelt on the ground and bowed their heads, crying out in unison, Your Majesty, please spare Princess Changning. Meanwhile, my mother's attendants cried out, Your Majesty, please spare the two princesses. The Emperor looked at me and said, Changning, do you have anything to say? I smiled faintly. Your humble daughter, Changning, has nothing to be ashamed of as a princess. Since I was reborn, everything I have done has been not only to change my own fate, but also to change the fate of Great Xia. I could no longer bear to witness the scenes of relentless warfare, nor could I bear to see smoke rising from every corner of the frontier and the people forced from their homes. I want to be a princess, but not one who's only good for a political marriage. Finally, everyone waited for the Emperor's verdict. He pondered for a long time, then said slowly, The story of the twin princesses being a sign of ill omen is indeed true, although the Grand Master is no longer with us. We must still heed his words. Therefore, you are hereby demoted to commoner status. Everyone looked up and saw that the person the Emperor was pointing at was none other than his younger sister, who was hiding behind the Empress. My younger sister and my mother were both stunned. Sui Ning stared in disbelief, her eyes wide. Father, why have you demoted only me? What about her? What about Changning? The Queen Mother quickly covered her mouth to stop her from speaking further. But she, too, found it hard to believe. Your Majesty, how can you be so biased toward Changning? Biased. Hearing my mother say that made me want to laugh. She's the one who's always been the most biased. Yet now she's turning the tables. She had protected Suwaning for over a decade. Yet when the Emperor finally stood up for me just once, she accused him of favoritism. The Emperor clapped his hands. Someone, bring me all the battle reports and military dispatches from the border. Stacks of military reports as high as small hills were laid out in a row before everyone. After glancing through just a few of them, one would discover that the name that appeared most frequently was Princess Changning. The Emperor said thoughtfully, in every battle report submitted by the General of the Guards, Changning's name appears. When the state preceptor spoke of Thailaman twins, he meant that one would face great fortune while the other would face great misfortune. Judging by the current situation, Changning must be the one destined for great fortune among the twins. As for you, Suwaning, the Emperor stared at her for a moment. You are welcome to go to the frontier as well. If you achieve the same accomplishments as your imperial sister, I will bring you back to the palace. Otherwise, I will recognize only Changning as my daughter. My sister has gone crazy. She couldn't accept the fact that we were worlds apart. She kept asking me, why? Why do you always get all the benefits? And why am I always the one who gets the short end of the stick? I asked her in return, when have you ever been the one to lose out? Haven't you always been the one stealing my opportunities? Her father granted her permission to spend one day reunited with her mother in the palace. But she was to leave the palace the very next day. That night, a fire broke out in the Empress Dowager's palace. It was started by my younger sister herself. The Empress Dowager was led out of the palace by the quick-witted palace attendants, and she watched helplessly as the fire grew ever larger. Seeing me arrive, Mother hurriedly called out, Changning, go save your sister. I said calmly, with a fire this big, who could possibly save her? The Empress roared. She's your sister, how could you stand by and do nothing? I laughed. If you want to save her, just go in yourself. I'll hold everyone else off for you. The Empress fell instantly silent. The fire burned all night long, and by morning, the Empress's hair was streaked with white. She hates me, she said. You're the one who killed Suwaning. I shook my head to correct her. No. You are the one who caused my sister's death. If Mother hadn't always spoiled her, she wouldn't have developed such a temperament. Mother, you've always told me to be tolerant and allowed my sister to act with impunity. But the way of the world is that only those who can endure survive to the end. Mother, you were wrong from the very beginning. After I left that day, the Empress Dowager moved out of the palace and went to the temple where my sister and I had grown up, where she took up monastic life. My wedding to Su Ruin took place as scheduled. On our wedding night, I couldn't help but ask him, why did a single letter from her make you leave back then? Su Ruin held me close. Why are you still thinking about this? My wife. It was my fault. I beg your forgiveness once again. Please, Your Highness, spare my life. I don't want an apology. I want to know what you're really thinking. Su Ruin thought for a moment and said to me, the first time I saw that cherry tree outside the coal palace, I felt it was special. That tree seemed very important to me. So when I read in the letter that something was wrong with it, I went right away to check on it. My dear, don't get jealous when I tell you this, but ever since I was a child, I've often dreamed of a woman standing beneath a cherry blossom tree. The tree in the coal palace looks exactly like the one in my dreams. I cupped his face in my hands and made him look at me. I asked him, so, do you think I'm just like the woman in your dream? He nodded with conviction. The more I look at it, the more it looks like it. Do you know why? Why? Because we've been destined to be together for lifetimes. That's the end of the story. Thank you all for reading. See you in the next one.